Balboa wasn't your typical insurance adjuster. He wasn't content just crunching numbers behind a desk. He was a man of action, a seeker of truth. His office was often the scene of a disaster, his tools a keen eye and a sharper mind. Balboa had a knack for seeing what others missed. A scorch mark here, a bent piece of metal there. To him, they whispered a story of negligence, of misfortune, of the fine line between accident and intent. His reputation preceded him. Insurance companies called upon him when claims turned complex, when the line between truth and deception blurred. They called him their secret weapon, their ace in the hole, Balboa, the insurance detective. But behind the steely gaze and the stoic facade, Balboa carried the weight of the stories he uncovered. He saw the human cost of tragedy, the shattered lives left in the wake of disaster. It fueled his determination to bring closure, to deliver justice, one claim at a time. The call came in on a crisp autumn afternoon. A helicopter, a news chopper, had crashed onto the National Mall. The news was filled with images of twisted metal and billowing smoke, a stark contrast to the usual serenity of the iconic space. 2 souls were lost that day, a seasoned pilot and a young, ambitious reporter. The news cycle churned, hungry for answers. Was it mechanical failure, pilot error, or something more sinister? Balboa arrived on the scene as the dust settled. He surveyed the wreckage, his eyes scanning every piece of debris. The smell of jet fuel hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the lives lost. He listened intently as investigators discussed the trajectory of the helicopter, the lack of a distress call, the unusual flight pattern. Balboa took it all in, his mind already piecing together the puzzle. Just days after the helicopter crash, Washington, D.C. was rocked by another aviation disaster. This time, it was an airliner, a passenger jet, that went down. It plunged into the icy waters of the Potomac River, sending shockwaves through the nation's capital. Panic ensued. Rescue boats swarmed the crash site, desperate to pull survivors from the wreckage. The nation watched in horror as images of the partially submerged plane filled their television screens. Balboa, still reeling from the helicopter investigation, got the call. He knew this was different, bigger, more complex. The stakes were higher, the potential for loss even greater. As he stood on the riverbank, the wind whipping at his face, he felt a familiar surge of purpose. He was needed here. He had to uncover the truth, for the victims, for their families, for a city on edge. Balboa's investigations were a study in meticulous detail. He approached each case with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. He interviewed witnesses, meticulously combing through their statements for inconsistencies. He scrutinized maintenance records, flight logs, and weather reports, looking for anything that could have contributed to the disasters. He examined the wreckage piece by piece, searching for clues that others might have overlooked. Balboa had a gift for connecting the dots. He saw patterns where others saw chaos, logic in the seemingly random. His mind was a labyrinth of deduction, each twist and turn leading him closer to the truth. He wasn't afraid to challenge the official narrative, to push back against pressure from those who wanted quick answers, simple explanations. Balboa knew that the truth was rarely simple, and he wouldn't rest until he found it. Section 5. Echoes of Loss, the Human Cost of Disaster. Behind the wreckage and the investigations, Balboa never forgot the human cost of these tragedies. He met with the families of the victims, listened to their stories, shared their grief. He saw the pain in their eyes, the questions that lingered long after the cameras were gone. There was the young couple on their honeymoon, their dreams dashed in an instant. The single mother returning home to her children, her seat empty, her laughter silenced. The businessman on his way to close a deal, his briefcase now at the bottom of the Potomac. Balboa carried their stories with him, their faces etched in his memory. He knew that no amount of insurance money could ever truly compensate for their loss. But he hoped that by uncovering the truth, by holding someone accountable, he could at least offer them some measure of justice, some sense of closure. Section 6. The walls close in, Balboa against the odds. Balboa's investigations often led him into murky waters. He faced resistance from powerful corporations, their high-priced lawyers throwing up roadblocks at every turn. He navigated the corridors of power where influence trumped truth and silence was a commodity. There were threats, veiled and otherwise, attempts to discredit his work, to paint him as a rogue agent, a loose cannon. But Balboa refused to be intimidated. He knew